Hi, my name is Katarina Sullivan and I would like to welcome you to my YouTube channel. It's not a sitting week of Parliament. No major political event has happened that would dictate what I talk about today. So I get to talk about what I want to talk about, which is what you guys want to talk about. Basically, I'm answering subscriber, viewer questions today. Well, one question in particular, because it's a little complicated, but only because people are making it complicated. Like, it's actually quite straightforward to understand. So one of the viewers of this channel asked if Australia is a centralized or decentralized government. So let's talk a little bit about what centralization means. If we have a scale of like centralization, decentralization, I think that works a little better than having the two absolute camps that you're either centralized or you're decentralized. So I like to think of it as a scale with gradients of centralization or decentralization. Centralization is basically whether or not the power is all within a specific person or a specific group of people. So a centralized government might look like a dictatorship, but it also might look like a ruling class, you know, maybe 10, 20, 50 people that make the decisions on behalf of everyone. Centralized just means that the power is in one central area, whether it's a person or a group of people. You can still have a centralized government in a democracy. You can vote for this ruling class, which is then where I say it's a bit of a gradient, because while the power is in the hands of those people, the power is in the hands of everyone to choose those people. So I would say on the scale of centralization, it's still a centralized government if there are people voting for a ruling class or a ruling person, but it's like down this way towards decentralization because the people actually have the power to vote. Australia is a decentralized government. The reason that we are a decentralized government is that our states and territories actually have quite a bit of autonomy. The most recent example at the time that I'm filming this video that we can sort of talk about is what's happening in Western Australia with the borders. So Prime Minister Scott Morrison has been pushing and pushing and pushing Premier Mark McGowan to open the borders. This is very close to my heart because I'm originally from Western Australia. Not something I'm overly proud of, but it happens. Scott Morrison's been putting all this pressure on Mark McGowan, but at the end of the day, Mark McGowan's like, no, we control our borders. To some extent, like, things in politics aren't always black and white. To some extent, there is kind of a centralization of government because the federal courts can decide whether or not that decision is viable. So for example, the ACT passed marriage equality long before the Commonwealth did. But the High Court turned around and was like, actually, you don't get to do that. So there is some decentralization in Australia, but still some centralization of government where there's still a bit of a control. So this is why I say I believe it's more of a gradient than just you're either centralized or you're decentralized. I think there's nuanced differences in every political system around the world as to who really has power in certain situations. As we go into more detail through how the Australian political system works videos, we'll start looking at the executive and the judiciary. I don't know why I was trying to say judiciary branches of government, and we'll actually understand their functions a little better. There are things that Australia could do to decentralize our government further, and there are also things Australia could do to centralize our government further. Part of the reason that it wouldn't be a good idea to have a centralized government in Australia, even though it is usually more efficient, is because the country is just so damn big. We are a massive country with not a very big population compared to the area, but it would be hard for a group of people in Canberra to be sitting here making decisions about a road between Broome and Darwin. It's so far away from Canberra, and we often talk about the Canberra bubble already and the fact that a lot of decision makers here forget to think outside of Canberra. let alone if we centralize the government further, it could cause massive issues. I love how the rabbits have been silent all day, and as soon as I'm filming, they're like, let me crunch loudly on this straw house. Obviously, we could still decentralize our government further, making only major decisions around things like international politics part of the federal government, and leave things like social security to the states. Whether or not that's a good thing, that's up for everyone's discussion. This is sort of where the whole decentralization topic gets a little bit interesting, because people are talking about, well, I think this would work, or I think this would work, or I don't think that would work. I hope this kind of answers the question. It's not a very straightforward, yes, Australia is decentralized, or yes, Australia is centralized. Australia is definitely not on the centralized sort of end of the scale. It's more on the decentralized end of the scale with little bits and pieces of centralization. I think the number one thing to take away from is the definition of centralization. Decentralization is where, after this video, if I hear centralization or decentralization one more time, or if I have to say it one more time, I'm going to go insane. It's too much for one video. But I think understanding the definitions of those words is really important. So understanding that a centralized government is one in which all the power is held in one area, and a decentralized government is one where the power is spread out among different bodies, including things like states and territories. Other takeaways to understand that decentralization is sort of our main form of government in Australia, but it is incredibly nuanced, that every single nation is going to have different levels of centralization and decentralization, and it's not just straightforward as either one or the other. If you have any questions about any of the content covered in this video, please let me know. I'd love to hear your thoughts on whether or not you think we should further centralize, we should further decentralize, or we're okay right where we are right now. It's totally zen here in this space. What am I talking about next week? Again, it's another surprise. It's just fantastic. Please ask your questions. I'm trying to get around to viewer questions before, pretty sure the week after, I'll be filming what happened in Australian politics. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe to my channel. Please share it with your family and friends. Please follow me on social media. Please check out my website, and I will see you next week. Bye.